Welcome to this conference. It is a great pleasure to have you here, and I hope that we are going to have some constructive discussions with you. Nicola has already stated to you the ground rules for this press conference, and I hope we can be able to abide by them. Now, this is not the first time that the Office of the Prosecutor engages with you. It has engaged with you in the past in relation to the initial process in respect of the Rohingya situation. In those preliminary processes, the idea was to determine whether the legal criteria under the statute are met for the prosecutor to open an investigation. Following those initial processes, the prosecutor submitted her request to the judges as she is required by the law, requesting the judges to authorize her to open an investigation relating to the situation of the Rohingyas. In November last year, the judges, after independently assessing all the information that the prosecutor had provided to them, decided to authorize her to open an investigation relating to the situation of the Rohingya, to look into the alleged crimes committed against the Rohingyas, which forced them to flee from their country into Bangladesh. This authorization by the judges has now paved the way for a fully fledged investigation by the Office of the Prosecutor. What does this mean? It means that the Office of the Prosecutor, through its investigators, will now be collecting evidence to try and establish the truth of what actually happened to the Rohingyas, to try and find evidence to ensure that there will be justice for the alleged crimes committed against the Rohingyas. This investigation process is going to be carried out by the investigators of the Office of the Prosecutor. It is going to be an independent, impartial, objective, and fair process whose aim is to determine the truth or to uncover the truth of what actually happened with a view to bringing justice to the victims of the crimes of the Rohingyas. This process, as I've said, is going to be fair, it is going to be impartial, and it is going to be objective. It will entail, among others, the investigators coming here to Bangladesh, in particular going to the camps, talking to the victims and establishing the witnesses, getting their stories and finding out exactly what happened to them. The end result of this, we hope, is that there is going to be justice for the victims, for the Rohingya victims. This method of evidence collection will entail taking statements from the Rohingya victims and witnesses. It will entail collecting other forms of evidence, including documents, materials, or any footages that will support the allegations that the prosecutor is making against anyone. I must stress that at this moment in time, the Office of the Prosecutor has not identified anybody as a suspect. There's no suspect at the moment. The suspect will only be identified through evidence. Once the evidence has been collected, it is that evidence which will point the Office of the Prosecutor as to who might be held individually criminally responsible for the alleged crimes against the Rohingyas. This process, one thing to stress again, is that it's going to be confidential. It is going to be confidential as between the Office of the Prosecutor and the victims and witnesses that it will be engaging with. Nobody will know about this process, and we have urged, and we are continuing to urge, that anybody that has been contacted by the Office of the Prosecutor should not disclose the fact that they have been contacted by the Office of the Prosecutor, either to their friends, to their families, to their relatives, or to anyone. This is for the purpose of protecting the integrity of the proceedings and to making sure that these proceedings remain impartial and independent as far as possible. We are appealing to you also as media, not to spread rumors about what is happening, or not to be able to say anything that you do not know about. If any one of you have got questions about the process, please contact Nicola Fletcher, who will be able to provide you with information to the extent that she can within the confines of confidentiality that is required of this process. Anybody that engages with the Office of the Prosecutor will also be protected. If any of these people, the witnesses or the victims that engage with the Office of the Prosecutor, feels in any way threatened, in any way, form or shape, that person should report that threat to the Office of the Prosecutor, to the investigators, and the investigators will take appropriate action to protect the individual that is being threatened in any way or the other by anybody. Threatening witnesses, trying to bribe them, or trying to do anything to dissuade them from speaking to the Office of the Prosecutor, or to make them not tell the truth, that is a crime under the Rome Statute, and anybody who is found to have done that will also be investigated and prosecuted by the Office of the Prosecutor. You may also be wondering, how long will this process take? It will take as long as it is necessary for the evidence to be collected, for enough evidence to be collected and presented to the judges. A case depends on the evidence. If you don't have evidence, if you cannot prove what you allege against anybody, then you don't have a case and the judges will throw out your case. In the Office of the Prosecutor, the principle is to collect as much evidence as possible in order to prove the guilt of the alleged perpetrators. And this process will continue for as long as it is necessary for the Office of the Prosecutor to collect enough evidence that it can be able to present to the judges and it meets the required standards that are demanded under the Rome Statute, and that the judges will be expecting the Office of the Prosecutor to comply with in order for them to be able to independently assess that evidence. The issue of cooperation is very important in this process. The office cannot operate without the cooperation of the various players in international criminal justice system. We depend on you as journalists, we'll be depending on civil society, both local and international, we'll be depending on international organizations, we'll be depending on states for the cooperation for us to be able to carry out these investigations. Cooperation from the government of Bangladesh is very good. We have engaged with the government of Bangladesh and we have received undertakings and pledges that they will be cooperating with us throughout these processes and that they will be providing us with any assistance as well as materials and information that we may require for the processing of this investigation. And we are looking forward to our continued constructive engagement with the government of Bangladesh. And I wish to take this opportunity on behalf of the Office of the Prosecutor to thank the government of Bangladesh for the cooperation that they have provided to the office so far in facilitating our work, and hope that we can continue to rely on this cooperation as we move forward. We are not receiving any cooperation from the government of Myanmar, unfortunately. We have been making efforts to talk to them, to try and to reach out to them, but so far we have not been able to get any assistance or cooperation from them. This is unfortunate because in order for the process to be fair, as I've said, we need to be talking to all sides. We need to be talking to all sides and to hear the stories from all sides. Unfortunately, we are not able to hear from the Myanmar government, but we'll continue with our efforts to try and persuade them to talk to us. The fact of the matter, however, is that this investigation will proceed to its logical conclusion with or without the cooperation of the government of Myanmar. I wish also to take this opportunity today to once again appeal to the government of Myanmar to engage with us, to work with us, if we all want justice for the victims of the crimes that are alleged to have been committed against the Rohingyas. You may also have heard of other mechanisms that are ongoing. The International Court of Justice, as you may be aware, delivered its decision in January this year. You also have heard about the independent investigative mechanism for Myanmar. Now you may be asking yourself, how are all these processes going to go along, and what does it mean for the Rohingyas, and what is the end result of each one of them? Now, each one of these mechanisms is performing its role in accordance with the mandate and functions that have been granted to it. The Office of the Prosecutor is about individual criminal responsibility. It is about accountability. It is about determining who facilitated, who planned, and who made the policies to expel the Rohingyas from their territory in the Rakhine state and made them to leave. It is about holding individuals individually criminally responsible, irrespective of their status, whether you're head of state, whether you're head of the army, whether you're an army soldier, whoever you are. The Rome Statute says, if you commit these crimes, you shall be held individually criminally responsible. And this is what the ICC is about. The case at the ICJ is between the government of the Gambia and Myanmar. It is a case where the Gambia is saying that Myanmar, as a government, as a country, has got a responsibility to protect its citizens and to protect the Rohingya in particular, and therefore requested the International Court of Justice, which deals with disputes between and among states. The government of Gambia has requested that Myanmar be ordered to take protection measures to protect the Rohingya people. And the decision in January this year by the International Court of Justice granting provisional measures is in accordance with the request that was made by Gambia. So we must make this distinction that the International Court of Justice is dealing with a dispute between states, the Gambia and Myanmar, while the International Criminal Court is dealing with individual criminal responsibility and seeks justice for the Rohingyas against those who are alleged to have committed the crimes against the Rohingyas. And this is about individual criminal responsibility. The independent investigative mechanism also has its own function. It is a commission of inquiry. It is intended also to establish the truth about what happened to the Rohingyas, and so that the Rohingyas can tell their story. Now, all these mechanisms will be working together. We are doing our level best to work together to ensure that there's no duplication of effort, and to try and explain as much as we can the roles that each one of us are playing in order to try to avoid any confusion. And we're hoping that now as we go on, we will be exchanging information to the extent that we can. We will be avoiding duplication to the extent that we can, but we are all working on parallel but necessary lines of inquiry, which ultimately will ensure that justice is done. The ICC process, much as it is going along with other processes, has got nothing to do with the repatriation of the Rohingyas. It is not about the repatriation of the Rohingyas. It is also not about the relationship between Bangladesh and Myanmar. We have made it clear to the government of Bangladesh that they can continue their negotiations, their discussions at the political level, whatever those negotiations are, and the ICC will not interfere with those negotiations or engagement that are going on between the government of Myanmar as well as the government of Bangladesh. Finally, I must stress that we are starting a long process. It is going to be a process that is fraught with challenges, many of which we have already experienced in other situations where we are working, but may be peculiar also to the situation here, the situation of the Rohingyas. The Office of the Prosecutor is determined to pursue this process to its ultimate conclusion. It is determined to ensure that at the end of the day, there will be justice for the Rohingyas. It is determined to ensure that accountability for the crimes that the Rohingyas have suffered, someone who has been responsible for these crimes is ultimately held to account and brought to justice. The idea behind the ICC is to ensure that if these crimes are investigated and prosecuted, hopefully in the future, anybody who thinks of committing these crimes in the future will think twice, knowing that there is justice. In the past, these crimes used to be committed, and people used to hide the cloak of acting for the government or under the guise of the government, and therefore were not held accountable. What the Rome Statute and the ICC is now saying is that whoever you are, whatever position you hold, whatever rank you're holding, if you commit these crimes, you will be held individually criminally responsible. And this is what this process is about. It is about justice, it is about accountability, and it is about ensuring that justice is done at the end for the crimes committed against the Rohingyas. I thank you for your attention. I'll stop here for now, and I'll take questions, if any, and clarifications.
Twice to violate human rights or do such kind of offenses. So already 3 years are going to be passed, and Myanmar is not cooperating. You have released it for the nationality. So after 3 years, you are just going to start collecting evidence. So how can you ensure justice? And do you think that when Myanmar is not cooperating and even you are not able to visit the site, you will be able to ensure justice and people have confidence to this process? Thank you.
I'll take these questions. I'll try to be brief in responding to them as much as I can. I think some of them are interrelated. As I've already said, Myanmar is not a state party to the Rome Statute, and therefore it has got no obligation to cooperate with the court. This in itself will present a challenge in that in an ideal situation, we should be able to go to Myanmar and collect the information from there. But unfortunately, we are not able to do so because Myanmar is not cooperating with us. This is a challenge. We all admit and we should all agree that it's a challenge, but it is not an insurmountable challenge. This in itself will not result in the office not being able to investigate and prosecute. We have had experiences in the past in some other situations where countries have refused to cooperate with us, have refused us entry into their territory, but we have been able to investigate and prosecute and brought some people, at least judges have come to the conclusion and we presented evidence to some people against these people to the judges. So Myanmar is not an exception in this way, in not being a state party and in not in refusing to cooperate with us and in not allowing us to be able to get into Myanmar. So it is going to be a big challenge, and it also factors into the issue of timing. That is also a challenge that is going to make us take us a little bit longer than maybe we could have if we were able to go to Myanmar, because now we have got to collect evidence not only amongst the Rohingya, maybe also amongst other witnesses, potentially who may be outside Myanmar in other countries. So that is going to be a challenge, but as I say, it is not insurmountable and it does not make our work impossible at all. We will be able to do that work. When will the investigation start? As I speak now, I am here with a team of investigators. They are already in the camps. They are already identifying various ways and methods by which they are going to be working. They are already beginning to talk to various other groups, not witnesses as such, but to talk to various other groups to try and identify the methods that they are going to be using to start this investigation. So the investigation themselves, in essence, they've already started because we have got the authorization from the chambers. So the investigations have already are underway. Not necessarily in terms of talking to witnesses as such, but also in terms of assessing documents that we have already received, analyzing those documents, and also trying to come up with what is called a case hypothesis. What is it now that you're going to be looking into? So all I can say that those investigations have started. You will not know about this investigation. As I said, the investigations are by nature confidential. You will not see ICC vehicles carrying ICC flags driving around in the camps or in Bangladesh because of the confidentiality and the need to keep the integrity of this investigation. So don't expect to see any publicity, or don't expect me to be coming here every now and then to tell you, now I'm in this stage of the investigations. We'll only engage with you again when there are major developments that warrant publicity in order to in order to keep the secrecy of these investigations. How will the perpetrators be identified? Our investigators are experienced. They are well-trained investigators. They come from all over the world, and they've got expertise in collecting evidence that will lead them to who the perpetrators are. As I said, and I need to stress this, the Office of the Prosecutor does not start off by identifying individuals and trying to find evidence against them. That's not how the system works. The system works in such a way that you collect the evidence, and it is the evidence that will lead you to the perpetrators. It is a complex legal technicality and methods that are used by the investigators to question witnesses, to talk to each and every other people that they can be able to talk to. And as a result of that, the collection of this information, the collection of this evidence, looking at the material, there are lots of footages, there are lots of newspaper articles, there are lots of things, the border guards, the police, all those people that saw what happened will be able to give an account of what they saw and what they perceived, on the basis of which the investigators will then be able to make an assessment and therefore identify who the perpetrators of these crimes are. This is the normal way in which prosecutors and investigators work in all the situations that you've been able to work, and this is the situation. This is the case here for the Rohingya as well. Yes, Myanmar is not a state party, and therefore, under the Rome Statute, the court does not have jurisdiction in Myanmar. However, the crime that is being investigated here is the crime of deportation. It is a cross-border crime. It is a crime that has started in Myanmar, which is not a state party, but has ended up in Bangladesh, which is a state party. Unlike displacement of people internally, if the Rohingyas had just moved from Rakhine state to one other state within Myanmar, then the IC would not have jurisdiction. But in accordance with the law, if people are forced to move from their own country and are deported, or as a result of persecution, as a result of killing, or as a result of any illegal acts, then once they cross that country and cross into another country which is a state party, the judges of the ICC and the law says that then the ICC has got jurisdiction. So if you read that if you look at the judgment, and also this appears clearly also now in the statement now, we explain exactly now why the ICC has got jurisdiction on the Rohingya situation, even though Myanmar is not a state party to the Rome Statute. Yes, it is 3 years since the crimes were committed, and but justice will still be done. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take another 3 years, but ultimately justice will be done. I have said again, and I'll repeat this, this is going to be a long and hard process. But the determination of the Office of the Prosecutor, through your assistance, through the assistance of the international community, to ensure that justice is finally done for the victims of the Myanmar situation, that determination remains unwavered and will continue until we come to the end of this. For this, we will appeal with you and to the international community and to everybody else now to be patient with us. Unfortunately, the reality is that international criminal justice sometimes takes quite a long time, but ultimately justice will be done. The beauty about the International Criminal Court is that it is a permanent international institution. It is not going anywhere. It is not ad hoc like any other. We're not going to say that at one stage, maybe after 3 or 4 years, it will close its doors. It is there to stay. So it may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years, but ultimately somebody will be brought to justice for the crimes that they have committed against the Rohingyas. This is what the pledge of the Office of the Prosecutor is, and this is the pledge that we'll be making to the Rohingya people to ensure that now, once that we have started this process, the Office of the Prosecutor is going to see this process to its logical conclusion.